14 minutes past 11. I hope you're enjoying, by the way, the new series we've started on BBC Radio York called Secret North Yorkshire.
Secret North Yorkshire.
And you can hear all these, by the way, on BBC Sounds. This is where we like to explore some of the less well-known and more unusual stories from places across our county. And this week, Sarah Irwin is looking into the story behind an international sport that was invented right here in North Yorkshire, but you might never have heard of.
There are no goals, no zones, no markings, no targets. The Americans call it a dodgeball on steroids. We call it a dash of dodgeball, a pinch of pelota, little lacrosse and a hint of hockey.
Welcome to Stillington Squash Courts. We're about 10 miles north of York, and I'm here to try out a sport that was invented right here in North Yorkshire. It's been played around the world, but have you ever heard of it?
I first got into it up in Northallerton through an online advert, I think, where they said, come along and try VX. So I went to Northallerton Squash Courts and tried it and went back every week. Having tried it once and loved it. My son came as well, so it was a nice thing to do together.
It's a good local community atmosphere. People come all ages. The younger ones, have a good run around, good bit of exercise. The older ones are a little bit more competitive.
I've been playing for well over 10 years now. So I've competed for England, actually not 5 times. Competed with one of the World Cups in Italy. Been to the trials that we held in India.
David, Lisa and Dan play VX. Now, it started out life called Rocketball around 20 years ago. Paul Hildreth and 2 others came up with the idea.
It was a mistake. Sorry, it wasn't a mistake, it was a misunderstanding. I had a not very successful technology transfer company, and one of my clients rang me one day and described something he was holding, and I got totally the wrong end of the stick. And I imagined people running around, pulling triggers and firing tennis balls at each other, like paintball with tennis balls. When I saw what he'd got, it was not like that. But we'd got the idea by then of throwing the balls at people, and so we ran with that. I had a professional company help us redesign the V-sticks, and away we went.
So, Paul, you just handed me this stick with 2 I don't really know how to describe it. It's sort of like a lacrosse end, also kind of looks like a canoe stick. What is it?
We called it a V-sticks. They've got the V and the X. It looks loosely like a double-ended lacrosse stick. There's a control bar in the middle and a throw catcher at each end. And all you need to do is scoop the ball up. It's that easy. Okay. And throw it. And then later on you get dodging, blocking, catching. But to start with, it's pick up and throw. Now the rules are very easy. There are no goals, no zones, no markings, no targets. Just the opposition. So the Americans call it a dodgeball on steroids. We call it a dash of dodgeball, a pinch of pelota, little lacrosse and a hint of hockey. So you're trying to hit your opponents. That's it. You've got it. Natural talent. Right. Throwing then.
Throwing, okay.
In schools, we get kids playing in 10 minutes at a fast pace, literally.
And how did it grow then from that initial, in inverted commas, mistake?
All right, well, one of the blokes that started it with me, he took the original idea, let a school trial it, and it evolved more from there. We launched it at the Sports Colleges Conference in 2005, and that was the days of the school sports partnerships with partnership development managers. The partnership development managers had a brief and a budget to increase participation. Well, this just ticked all their boxes. It gets non-sporty kids involved, it's gender neutral, it's inclusive, you can get kids playing at a fast pace. We've got very sporty players, but we've also got a lot of players that do no other sport whatsoever. So it ticked all their boxes, and it just went across the country.
At its peak, thousands of school children were playing it across the country and also went international. At one point, they had 26 national governing bodies.
We've got international competition. We had our first Test match series in India. We have a 4-yearly Team World Cup. We have an annual V2 World Cup. V2 is the singles that we're doing tonight.
There have been many ups and downs with VX. Paul says the development in schools stopped when the government changed and those sport partnerships ended. But he says they built back up.
Peak was in 2019. We had the most fantastic Singles World Cup held in York, so it came back home, and that had everything. So by then the sport had grown to, at the Singles World Cup, we had a Youth World Cup, a Senior World Cup and a Masters World Cup. That's over 40s. And it had everything. Because it was back in York, we had crowds coming to support individual players. The noise and the atmosphere was absolutely indescribable. It had everything. The photographer was taking photographs at the front at the glass. He had to leave because it was just hurting his ears. That tournament really did have everything, and the comments were, God, if this sport was on the television, it would be through the roof.
Well, let's meet Tom now, who is the reigning world champion.
Paul's the inventor, and I'm his son, to be honest. I didn't have a lot of choice. But, I've been playing this for like 20 years. So, I don't know, been everywhere, done it all, seen it all.
So does that mean he tested out all the prototypes and everything on you?
Yeah, a little bit. I do remember being like 13 or something, and my friend and I had been in the garden just like practicing throwing balls with early prototypes with drain pipe with a couple of scoops on the end. What
does it take then to be world champion? I've seen you guys. It kind of looks like it might hurt. It's exhausting. I've given it a go myself. Your fitness levels have got to be pretty decent.
I think you need to learn to pace yourself. I think if you can make the other person do more work, sort of like with squash, if you can get that sort of like centre of the court position, it will do you a lot of favours. And playing small balls where you can pick them up again quickly and not playing big shots where it bounces off around the court.
Now that tactic was where I failed. I did try to play for about 2 minutes. It's so good for your fitness. I was absolutely shattered. Now the sport was also badly hit by the pandemic in 2020. So does Paul think it will ever recover?
Some clubs have gone. They were hit so hard that some clubs have gone. We're focusing more on schools now. We have a new regional centre of excellence near Mansfield. Really enthusiastic, trying to grow it in the area. We've got a guy in Sunderland trying to grow it in the North East. There's a guy with a coaching company in the West Midlands, runs VX West Midlands. So things are happening. Hong Kong are really going great guns. I'm due to go to Kenya again in January. I got a phone call saying, can you come over again? We've got more schools involved. We want to grow this right across East Africa. So, yeah, it's picking up. Struggling here, perhaps, but schools are starting to see the benefits of it again. But so much, because we lost so many people, there is now so much falling on the shoulders of so many people that it's getting the word out.
So Paul is really trying, and maybe, just maybe, one day he'll be able to change his email signature, which currently says VX, the best sport you've never heard of.
Sarah Irwin. That's Stillington Squash Courts. Hearing the story behind VX, I'd never even heard of that before. A sport that was invented in North Yorkshire and since been played around the world. So if you enjoyed the sound of that, of course you listen back to it on BBC Sounds. Go to bbc.co.uk/sounds and just search for Secret North Yorkshire. Press subscribe and you'll get a notification when a new episode is published. Right, it's Jericho Keys, you're on BBC Radio York, and this is your 10-minute warning.